Well, the governor of our state, Gregg Abbott, joins us now live from Austin following his announcement yesterday about the gradual reopening of Texas. Governor, thank you for taking a few minutes to check in with us here. And as I'm sure you know, everybody agrees that Texas needs to reopen. Not everybody agrees on the timetable. What was it that convinced you that now was the time for phase one of your plan?
Decisions like this are based upon the data that we have as well as input from doctors. We have four of the best doctors in Texas who are advising us about this, including a former head of the FDA, former head of Medicaid and Medicare for the U.S., an infectious disease specialist in charge of tracking and tracing COVID-19. And so we have great advice from these doctors about whether or not we can open up, and if so, what types of strategies can be used in opening up. It's clear that the high point of the number of people testing positive in Texas was on April the 9th. We've had a downward sloping trend about that, but also very importantly, we continue in Texas to have a very low death rate, a very low hospitalization rate when you compare ourselves to some of these other states. And so if you look at, if you would, these safety metrics about how safe things are in the state of Texas, compared to other states, they're looking good. So there's no reason for us to continue to put a lockdown on our economy. We can open up. However, we must open up very safely. And that is why the standards that were recommended by the doctors were at this particular time in phase one to open up things like restaurants, all retail stores, malls, movies, museums, only at 25% capacity. If we can show that we can do that for 2 weeks, then we can expand that capacity to, say, 50%. So this is a gradual, slow process to make sure we continue to follow the data and continue to listen to the advice of good doctors.
Let me ask you about this, because we have heard from folks, I'm sure you have, hair salons and barber shops. What's going to be different for them on May 18th as opposed to May the 1st?
I will tell you this, and that is we may even be able to make a decision about that before May the 18th. The advice from doctors was this, and that is in barber salons or let's say barber shops and hair salons, you have people in very close contact. Even though they're wearing masks, we got to find a way that we can have people in very close contact not be transmitting COVID-19 from one person to another. So as we speak at this moment right now, my team is working with barbershop owners and hair salon owners on finding out the best practices they can come up with to make sure we will be able to get these open as quickly as possible.
All right. Can you give us an idea of where we stand in terms of expanded testing for our state? I believe you mentioned that yesterday.
Sure. Two things about this. One is testing, and the president had a big announcement about this yesterday with all these private providers, and so the ability to produce the collection and the testing equipment is ramping up very rapidly. And just today, Texas went over 300,000 people have been tested, and so we continue to see increases in testing capability driven largely by the private sector. On top of that, however, I announced yesterday what's called a testing and tracing strategy. This is a strategy that does what we call a box in the expansion of COVID-19. Anytime anybody tests positive, we will trace back and find out everyone they had any type of contact with, so we can test all those people and make sure that we can isolate anybody who has COVID-19. That will slow, if not stop, the spread of the coronavirus.
Absolutely. Now, of course, you know, camps are a big part of summer, and I think you mentioned that work is being done to try to figure out that piece of the puzzle. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Listen, these camps, sometimes they're day camps, sometimes they're overnight camps. They're very important for our kids, very important for our parents. We want to get them open. It's so important for our society and the ability for people even to go back to work. And after my press conference yesterday, we continued working with those who operate camps on strategies that will make it safe for kids to be able to go to those camps and make safe for day camps for kids to return home and come back. The last thing we can do is to have these kids importing COVID-19 into a campground, exposing other kids as well as their counselors to COVID-19. So we're just working to hone strategies a little bit, working as fast as we can to try to get those camps opened up.
Let me ask you this, Governor. Is there a word or something perhaps that you can say to offer hope to those folks who have lost jobs during what has been an unforeseen crisis like this?
Well, this has been unforeseen, and it's a tragedy for all those who have lost jobs because of no fault of their own. And the word of hope is that Texas is moving at warp speed to try to get our businesses back up and running again. We want people out of the unemployment lines, back on the payrolls, earning a good paycheck so they can pay their rent, pay their bills, and live a lifestyle that they are accustomed to living. We want to restore livelihoods, and we go to work on that every single day.
Hey, finally here, Governor, you mentioned that reopening is allowed but not required this coming Friday. What's the thought behind that?
Well, listen, even though we're reopening businesses in Texas, there are a lot of people who still have fear about that, and they may not want to go into the workforce. And I just wanted to make clear that even though we are reopening, you don't have to leave your home and go back to work if you don't want to. There are some people who are still afraid of this, who may contract it, and so they want to say that they just want to continue to stay at home, and we want to encourage them. If you're afraid of contracting COVID-19, go ahead and feel free to stay at home. But I would add this, especially understand that 75% of the deaths from COVID-19 are people aged 65 and older. We strongly encourage people who fall into that category to stay at home if at all possible, so that we can reduce the number of COVID-19 related deaths in Texas.
All right, Governor, thank you. We do appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to speaking again in the days ahead.
Thank you so much.
All right. Coming